Hello, and welcome to the Expert Series in Business Planning, presented by the Center for Business Modeling. CBM's mission is to help business leaders and entrepreneurs plot a simplified path to success with a full array of streamlined financial, operations, sales, and marketing planning tools. I'm your host, Nate Warren. Now, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to make the claim that we simplify business planners' lives and expect you to sit through an hour-long podcast. So we're going to get in and out in about 12 or 15 minutes today during our chat with today's guest, Chris Ryan. Chris is a nationally known B2B sales and marketing practitioner, writer, and speaker. He's run multi-million-dollar efforts for both Silicon Valley giants as well as plotted the growth for successful B2B technology startups right here in Colorado. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Nate.
Hey, so you're going to talk to us today a little bit about branding and positioning and why it's such a huge building block of the successful business planning. So you're going to talk to us a bit about how basically the process impacts the company's value.
Exactly.
And that all starts with a strong brand, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so let's start off. Let's talk about this. So first of all, a strong brand, you talk about a brand and it's sort of an abstract concept, but actually a strong brand for a company can be a boon to the stock price, make you more valuable. It can be a sales and profit accelerator, help you sell and help you sell more profitably. It can be a tool to attract top talent to your company. Lots of people want to go to work for companies like Google that have outstanding brands. It could be a magnet that will help drive merger or acquisition activity. The acquiring company always wants to know that they're buying a strong brand, and it certainly will make you a more valuable acquisition target. And finally, it can be a company morale booster. It will get people excited about coming to work for you. I like this quote from a professor at the Wharton School. He said, a valuable brand delivers a return for the company on two dimensions. Either it allows the company to charge a premium price or it adds more volume or market share. And certainly those are strong economic impacts. So some of the attributes, the specific attributes of a brand that drive company value. First of all, the brand should be known by the target audience. The better known it is, assuming that you're known in a positive way. Number two, it should differentiate you from all competitors, and we're going to talk a bit about that and how that is so important economically. Three, it offers a clear and compelling benefit, so people have a sense that when they do business with you, they get some personal benefit out of it. It should be a respected brand. And finally, it should be a timeless brand, not something that's only of short-term duration. We joke about brands like the Chia Pet or something like that, fad type of brands that may have very short-term economic value, but a couple of years later nobody knows or cares anymore. So let's talk about it. We talked about the importance of differentiation a little bit ago, and we talk about differentiated brands versus commodity brands. And basically a commodity brand is something where the main difference between brand A and brand B is the price that the purchaser pays for it. So in a differentiated brand, the kind we're talking about that has a solid economic value, you get a short sales cycle. You get less, if any, competition at all, hopefully no competition. You're able to drive premium price points, sell your product or service for a higher price than the competition at a higher margin, and the brand itself has lots of inherent value in it versus little or no inherent value in the commodity type brand. Okay, next slide please. Okay, let's talk about some of the world's most valuable brands. Forbes magazine actually did a study where they calculated the economic value, the actual brand value of some of these companies. And as you can see, Apple leads the list, and their brand is worth $124 billion. Going down the list, Microsoft, Google, Coca-Cola, IBM, McDonald's, GE, Samsung, Toyota, and finally Louis Vuitton at a value of almost $30 billion. That's pretty exciting news. Now let's look at the other side of the coin at the next slide. Brands that have declined in value over the years. So you're going to see sort of the negative economic impact of a poorly performing brand. Brands like Sears, BlackBerry, which used to be Research in Motion, H&R Block, Yahoo, and J.C. Penney certainly aren't going to make the top 10 list for brand value, and these brands definitely have some rehabilitation to do to get back into having a strong positive perception and strong economic value. So the essence of brand awareness, and I love this quote, it's from our friend Jerry Garcia. He said, success isn't about being perceived as the best at what you do. It's about being perceived as the only one who does what you do. And if you look at those brands we talked about in the top 10 early on, those would be perceived in a category unique to themselves. And that's why they're worth so much. Next slide, please. And here I am.
and here you are. Chris, that was actually really good. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions if I could.
Absolutely.
So obviously you sit down with business marketing and C-level leaders from SMBs to global international companies on a regular basis. When you're sitting down with them, what are some of the telltale signs that you see that their branding and positioning is mushy and needs some help?
Great question. The first sign, and the one we call this the big red flag, is if I go and talk to half a dozen executives in a company and they each give me a different description of what their brand is or what their brand promise is, it automatically tells me that there's something wrong because they can't even decide amongst themselves how is the marketplace going to know. So that would be a big warning sign. And then secondly, if they don't have a strong positive view of the brand themselves, how are they going to communicate that to the marketplace? If there may not be any excitement about the brand. Internally they may perceive it as stale. So these are some of the warning signs that your brand needs some rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm. And then some of the people who are listening might be like, well, how do I get there? And I thought maybe you'd want to talk for a minute about what a SWOT tool is and how it's instrumental to defining your value.
Well, SWOT is a tool, and I know that Center for Business Modeling has an excellent SWOT tool that's available. And SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. So often we'll take an executive team through this exercise so that what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this attribute called congruence. And that is that the actual strengths of a company, their strengths and their opportunities, match what they're saying about their brand. So that, because a lot of times you'll see people claiming things about a product like we have the highest quality product or the best service or what have you. They claim leadership in a category that they just don't have. We call that the incongruent brand because the marketplace always calls you to task for that when you try to misrepresent your brand. So what we want to do is align the strengths and opportunities of the company and also make sure that we've negated their threats and their weaknesses so that they come through with a brand that is spot on to what they can actually do out there in the marketplace. So that's how we use the SWOT to help define a brand that has better economic value.
Uh-huh. And so in terms of connecting insight to action, we've walked through a good SWOT process. What are some of the, once we have this clarified understanding of our brand and really what separates us in our arena, what should me and my team be prepared to do once we're satisfied that we've done a good SWOT?
Well, let's talk about it from the branding perspective. You've created a brand promise, a value proposition for your company. We often do an exercise, we call it creating a messaging platform for a company. And this kind of becomes the template for everything that you say going forward about the company. It always is in alignment with those key strategic messages, which, again, start with your brand promise. And you carry that copy all the way through with everything that you say. See, creating a brand is not all that difficult, but what you need from that point on is consistency. You always present it in the same way over and over and over again, and don't violate the principles that you established when you came up with your brand. So that's really what we ask clients to do, is to carry that brand promise through in every single thing, not only in what they say on the website or in their collateral materials, but how they act when they're with customers and so forth. That we call that living the brand.
Yeah, a lot of I think one of the ways that companies miss the boat on this is that they treat the SWOT process as sort of a homework exercise to be done and filed away, when in fact, what it is a guidepost to let you check whether you're on the web or at an event, given your elevator pitch. You should be able to look back to that guidepost, right, and say, is what I'm saying lined up with who we said we were?
Exactly, and that's a good point, and that's why it's always useful to go back and do your SWOT analysis on a regular basis. We recommend quarterly or at least twice a year, so that you can make sure that you're living, again, your company's being run on the principles that you established in your brand promise.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you touched on that. Because I'd love it if you could talk for a minute about sort of doing SWOT as a launch from a blank slate, or as you said, a sort of checkup or a reboot of a company.
Yeah, I mean, it's really both. You want to do that, and if you're doing your SWOT right, you can see that the items on this, your strengths, are going to change over time. Your weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, are going to change over time, and that's not a bad thing. Hopefully, they're changing in the ways that you desire. It's not just figuring out where you are today, but it's like, where do I want to be in 6 months, and then going back and doing a review and saying, are we fulfilling the mandate that we set 6 months ago for change in our company, so that we could live our brand out, as we talked about before.
Absolutely, and that actually sets up the last question I had for you, and that is outcomes. And in terms of, I'm sure you have some experiences where you've seen how good branding and positioning and a really strong, differentiated brand actually helps a team on the ground. Can you give us an illustration of that?
Well, I'll give you one illustration from my career. Early on in my career, I was a director of marketing for a startup company called Group One Software, and we had a choice when it came to branding. And one of the advantages of when you're just starting out as a new company is you have a clean slate, and you can brand and so forth. But then again, like we said before, you have to live the brand out. And so we could have taken a very narrow focus, something like postal discount software or merge-purge software or something like that. Instead, we set a brand. Back then, we tagged the company the Direct Marketing Software Company. That brand lasted for 2 decades, and the company was sold a few years ago to Pitney Bowes for almost $500 million. So you can see, from a pure startup with no assets to speak of, how that brand itself. Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing. There were a lot of great management team and good products and all that. But I think with a much weaker brand or an undifferentiated brand, the company would not have been successful. And so I think it's a good example of the whole premise of this talk today, is that your brand has a big could potentially have a big economic value.
It certainly does. And Chris, with that's really good stuff. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so I thank you humbly for making some time for us today.
Happy to help.
And for those of us listening in and watching, once again, that was our guest for the day, Christopher Ryan. Chris is, of course, president of Fusion Marketing Partners, and he blogs voluminously at greatb2bmarketing.com. You can connect with him via his company, or to get some of his shared wisdom at his blog. Also, if you want to reach out personally, he's available on LinkedIn and Twitter if you want to access him there. Once again, this is it for this installment of the Expert Series in Business Planning. As always, we're here to help you take the brain damage out of business planning. So you should head on over to centerforbusinessmodeling.com and avail yourself of the many free resources we have on the site right now. Also, if you have a business planning topic you'd like to see on an upcoming podcast, please reach out to info@centerforbusinessmodeling.com. We'd be happy to field your questions and get an expert to maybe throw some light on some of the questions that are keeping you up at night. Until the next time, thanks for listening, and keep planning to win.